Hey YouTubes, welcome back to the Guitar Slinger Hockey channel. Have a video here for you, as the title suggests, to do a comparison and see if the Bauer P92 curve and the CCM P29 curve are in fact the same curves. Um, I'm sure you've heard, talking to people, talking to local hockey shops, hearing it on the marketing, that these are exactly the same curves with no performance differences at all. So if if you're looking for a Bauer stick and they don't have one in stock, just use a P29 from CCM. It'll be just as good, if not better, or it should feel the same. So I figured what I would do today is take these two sticks. We got a Bauer Vapor Hyperlight on the left with a P92 curve and a 70 flex, and then a CCM AS4 Pro Super Tax on the right with a P29 curve, also in the 70 flex. So today, what I hope to do is show you if these sticks are um, technically, from a specs perspective, exactly the same curve like everybody says, or there are differences. And if there are differences, I'm going to leave it up to you to say whether or not you think that they're worth it or not. But just because I hate seeing uploads where the uploader doesn't provide his or her own feedback on what they think, just to hear their perspective on it, I will provide some perspective because I've logged a lot of hours with both of these curves, as I'm sure some of you have as well. So let's just see what happens, and hopefully this will be a determining factor if you're trying to be swayed one way or another, or maybe at least have you reevaluate whichever of these two curves that you're currently using, if in fact we find them to be different. So let's get into it. Let's take a quick look at the blades a little closer up. Okay, before we get started, I just want to make a note here. Since you're not going to be able to see the entire stick for this video, just know that the white tape is the Bauer Vapor stick and the black tape is the CCM Super Tax stick. So I'm just going to go over this, just obvious observations here. So to me, the Super Tax stick on the right looks like it doesn't have as much meat on its bones, so to speak, as the P92 does. So it looks to me like it's got a thinner blade from top to bottom, all the way from the heel or throat height all the way up to the toe, whereas it looks to me like the P92 on the left has a taller throat height and a taller toe, so it has maybe more of a shape to it, more of a contour. Whereas maybe this P90, or excuse me, the P29 on the right has maybe more of a tame profile to it, for lack of a better term. But that's just kind of first impressions when I looked at it, which is kind of one of the reasons why I was like, kind of interested about trying out the specs and taking a look a little bit closer. So let's take a look at the curve profiles now. So I can't honestly see a huge difference in these two curves, but if you look close at the P92 on the right with the white tape, in my opinion, the curve starts to open up a little closer to the heel than does the P29 on the left. And by open, I mean the curve starts a little closer to the heel. Additionally, I think that the facing does open up more than the P29, and that, to me is a sign of being easier to elevate the puck. But that's just kind of observational, right? So what do you guys think? Does that look like it opens up a little bit more and starts the curve a little closer to the heel? I say yes, but open to interpretation here. Okay, so now let's transition to the lie of the sticks, because with a P92 and a P29, those are not the same. If we take a look at the two sticks here, we can see the P92 curve on the Vapor has a higher lie than that of the P29 on the Super Tax. And of course, this would be true across all three models of the CCM and all three models of the Bauer sticks too, for the respective curves. So this is probably the difference of maybe a half a lie, half a degree. So the CCM having maybe a closer to a 5 lie, and the Bauer having a closer to a 5.5, something like that. Always got to remember to ignore whatever lie numbers that they show on the shafts of the stick, but we can see here that a P92 curve is going to get you a higher lie than the P29. So who does this make sense for? So in my experience doing a lot of coaching, I have found coaching of adult players, I should add, they struggle with the higher lie sticks. They tend to have more prone to bending over, keeping the puck in front of them. They're not really doing the proper bending of the knees over the toes of your skates, standing upright, keeping the puck close to the body like a higher lie would be good for. So what I see a lot of the time is people that have the P92 curves from the Bauer line of sticks, they tend to wear the tape off their heels a lot, and then wonder why pucks tend to slide under the toe of their blade. So that is a consideration, even if somebody likes the curve, P92 curve over a P29. So, but supposedly they're the same curves, no changes, no differences. So let's get into that right now. Let's start taking a look at the specifics via use of the calipers, and we'll find out if that's true. But here's one example of where the two curves are not the same. One's got a higher lie than the other one, so got to keep that in mind. Anyways, let's take a look at the specs. The first spec I want to take a look at is something called the throat height. So this is where you do a lot of your passing and you're receiving the puck a lot. And so we're taking a look here at the P29 curve on the CCM stick, and we're measuring this in millimeters. So right now, the throat height of the P29 blade is 61.08 millimeters. And where that comes into play from an important standpoint is at times, depending on the throat height of any given curve, it may make it a little easier for the pucks to jump over the top of your blade if it's a little on the short side. And so this was one of the first things that I noticed just visually looking at the throat height of both of the curves. And so I wanted to see if there was really much of a difference. So let's take a look at the P92 and see if there is. And sure enough, there is. The P92 does have a taller throat height, albeit not by that much, as you can see, 62.78 millimeters. But having used both curves a lot, that difference seems to make the difference with regard to receiving passes that might be tumbling or bouncing a little bit. So, this doesn't mean I like the P92 better than the P29 or the P29 better than the P92, but this is a legitimate difference. So right now, we've seen that the lie of the two curves and the throat heights of the two curves are different, albeit not by that much, but they're different. So we have already kind of disproven two of the common conceptions that these are the same curves. So let's move on to the height of the toe on both of these sticks or both of these curves, because the toe kind of helps with your toe dragging and all that kind of good stuff. So let's see if there's much of a difference here. And if we measure the widest part of the toe on the P29 curve for CCM, we're seeing that it's 73.01 millimeters, as you can clearly see. So, this is something that is what I've noticed using the P29 curves is that it's a little harder to pull off the toe drags and things like that. And I don't know if it's because of that height right there. It may or may not be, but let's take a peek at the P92 and see the difference there. And once again, we're seeing a difference on the P92, so 76.03 millimeters. That is, I feel like, significant enough to make a difference for toe drags. There's a little more area on that toe to grab the puck, so that could be a factor in how the puck feels when you're stick handling and toe dragging and other things, lifting the puck close into the net. But yet again, here we are with another measurement that's telling us that there is, in fact, a difference. So let's move on to the last measurement here that I thought was important, and that has to do with how thick the blades are on both of these curves. So let's check that out. And that'll be the last measurement we take before I give you my final thoughts. So lastly, we have the width of the blade. So this is kind of when we're talking about passing, shooting, that kind of stuff. We're seeing that on the CCM P29 curve. We have a blade width of 7.54 millimeters in kind of that sweet spot where we would be doing all the passing and such. So um, I have definitely noticed some feedback between this one and the P92. So let's take a quick peek at the P92. Okay, once again, another measurement and another different technical spec of 8.78 on that same area for the P92. So pretty much everything about these two curves is different from just taking some measurements here. So we're looking at the lie, the curve, the actual curve. I mean, the loft that the blade has, the twist that it has, the width of the blade, the throat height, and the width of the toe, or the height of the toe, whatever. So pretty much everything about these two curves is different, except for when you look at them from a distance. So we're hearing that these are the same curves. They kind of look like it for sure. I definitely would be using either one of these curves, though. I mean, there's no changing that. I'd definitely be using a P92 if a P29 wasn't available, for sure. But you know that this is pretty much showing us that there is a difference here between the two curves that you should be aware of. So now let's talk about the final thoughts about how, like, what you notice when you're playing, and I'll just give you my experiences on what I've noticed and also what I think would be a good choice for myself, and why that might be a good choice or maybe not for you. So let's get into that. Okay, one last thing I'll mention too. There was, in fact, a measurement that was the same that I guess I didn't speak to, and that would actually be the blade length. So the one spec on these two curves that is the same is actually the length of the blade. So literally everything else was different. So they are not the same. So the question becomes, does this matter? Who cares? So this is my experience from having used both of these curves for years. So what I'll notice is when you talk about things like the thickness of the blade, what we're really talking about is the thicker the blade, the more damp the puck is going to feel on your blade. So what you'll notice is, like, any model of Bauer stick, whether it's the Vapor, Nexus, or Supreme line of sticks, you're going to notice that all of those blades are going to be softer feeling or more damp feeling, in air quotes, more damp feeling than anything that you get from CCM with the P29 curve. And right now we would say that the Vapor has the quote unquote pingiest blade, whereas maybe the Supreme or the Nexus has a super damp blade. And then if we went over to CCM, the Trigger has the softest feeling blade. And the the SuperTax has the pingiest blade. But any day of the week, all the Bauer curves are going to be more dampened feeling than that of the P29s on the CCM sticks. So, if you like a more dampened feel, you're going to like a curve that has a thicker feeling blade. So, like any of the Bauer sticks with a P92 curve. If you're somebody that likes a lot of pop off their blade, you're probably going to like the P29 curves. They're just a thinner blade, get you more puck feel, a little more pop, and the shots are pretty obvious because, at this point in time in 2022, really, there's nothing that beats the shot power of a CCM stick, and you can pick any of the three sticks that you want. They're just going to dominate Bauer right now in this particular point in time. Yeah, it's just like that's just kind of how it is right now, and I'm sure the pendulum will switch at some point, and I hope it does because there'd be some cool things that come from it. And then, so really damp versus pop. So that's kind of be the two things with the blade thickness. When we talk about the throat height, this is one that is actually a pretty significant one for the level that I'm playing at. People pass hard in the the level that I'm passing at that I'm playing at, and so there are times when the puck is tumbling a bit and it hits my blade over the throat and it'll just kind of pop over the top of the blade, whereas I don't have that problem at all with the P92 curve. And in fact, the P29, if it had a taller throat height in it, it probably would be the perfect feeling blade to me. But it almost makes an argument for some sort of max height blade. But CCM doesn't really make one except for the P90 TM. That's the closest it has, but it's still not considered to be max height like a Bauer P92M. So the P29 is not quite as awesome as controlling pucks as the P92 with regard to picking up kind of hot tumbling passes. So that's something to keep in mind. Regarding the toe height of the P92 is going to give you a little more surface area to pull the puck close to your body before you rip it than the P29 will. I mean, that's just not something I usually risk with the P29. So that's something to keep in mind. And then finally, we have the lie of the sticks here. So that's really going to be your own personal preference. If you're somebody who carries the puck close to your body, you're going to like the higher lie of the P92. If you're somebody who's like me, who skates with the puck out in front of my body a bit, you're going to like the lie of the P29. And then we get to the actual curvature of the blade. So what I've noticed is that both the P92 and P29, they do shoot fairly similarly. However, the P29 is a significantly more accurate blade to me than the P92. With the P92, I have a tendency to shoot pretty high above the net, and one thing you guys should know is that my shots are typically I'm a wrist shot guy from the top of the circle or the blue line. I'm not a quick release guy. I'm not like in close to the net doing that kind of stuff. So the higher lie combined with the curvature of the P92, generally speaking, I have a tendency to sail it a little high over the net, whereas the P29 don't have that issue. The P92, it does excel close to the net. So in the event that I am playing forward and I'm up in front of the net, it's easier for me to get the puck elevated a little quicker, and that's for two reasons. That's the higher lie, because the puck is closer to my body, and that's also the fact that the blade of the P92 is ever so slightly more open than that of the P29. So those are kind of that's my assessment of the two blades. And if you can't tell the difference when you're trying these two curves out in your own daily life, no harm, no foul. We're only doing this for recreational purposes to say, hey, yes, there is actually a difference in the way not only the specs here, but the way these sticks perform, these curves perform. And so, like, I happen to believe that a lot of people who like the P92 and also like the P29, those people that have their preferences are probably liking it for one of those reasons that I already discussed. Like, you can elevate the puck close to the net, or you play the puck close to your body. They probably like them for that reason, but it's not, there is a difference is the point. We've proven that today. And then there is a feel difference when you're shooting it. So maybe the next time that you're out at a stick and puck, or get a chance to try somebody else's stick in a warm up, you can see if you can tell a difference. Usually, the most noticeable thing is that people will say that the P29 is too pingy or too bouncy for them, whereas they feel like they have better control over the P92 curve. So where does that leave us? As I promised, I would give you my perspective on my favorite curve of the two. And so I am personally going to take the CCM P29 curve all day, every day. And although there are things about the curve that I don't like, I don't like the how low the throat height is, and I would rather have the toe be a little bit larger, like the P92. At the end of the day, the lie and the accuracy on the curve is just what wins me over. I'm just having the lower lie based upon how I skate enables like solid passing for me, just solid control, and then because the curve is what it is from a standpoint of not being as aggressive as that of the P92. I have significantly better accuracy than I do with the P92. So that's the reason why I'm going to go with the P29. And I guess a part of that would be just the fact that CCM sticks I think are superior over other brands at this point. But that's just my 2.5 cents. So your mileage may vary, of course. But anyways, that's my opinion. So at this point, love to hear your comments on this, or if you have any questions about what I went over. But I hope I helped dispel the myth that the P29 and the P92 are the same curve. They are not. So other than that, thanks for checking out the channel, and we will be back with other videos soon. Peace.